And we are back, everybody. I'm ready for another week. We have some fun stuff. We're going to be watching, of course, Umbrella Academy, episode 4. I know it says part 3, part 4. Just roll with it. It's cool. Let's bring on our co-host today. We have Kat. Say hello.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Hey, we're all here. Unfortunately, our third co-host, he's in a better place. And by better place, he's not here in Yakima, which is always a better place. No, he's just not feeling well, but hopefully Shaw will hopefully feel better soon. So feel better, Shaw. So yes, we are here to watch Umbrella Academy episode 4, season 1. What did you think, Kat, of that episode?
So I think when I watched it through the first time, like I'm guessing that either I was like doing other stuff because the only thing I remember about this episode is the incident with the apartment keys.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Sure.
But it also, for me, was that good reminder because we know at the end of episode 3, you had where Cha-Cha and Hazel had stormed the house.
Yep.
And the chandelier had fallen on Luther.
Yep, Luther had gotten hit.
And like we talked a little bit about that, but it was also that reminder as to part of the reason why he was so kind of like, don't look at me, was that the rest of the family didn't know.
Yep.
I had forgotten that was something that had happened after the rest of the family had left.
Yeah.
So they just thought that he was like, eating his Wheaties, chugging them protein shakes, doing them
working out. Like
yeah. He's doing that CrossFit, getting all swole. And so they didn't know.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten that they didn't know until rewatching this episode.
It's an interesting choice to show us this scene because I think it's very powerful, but it's at first glance you wouldn't think anything of it because you're like, okay, why are you showing us him 7 years ago before he got bulked out? And then you're like, oh, okay, like wow. And then also and so this, you said you hadn't read the comic, right?
Right. I have not read the comics. I've only watched the show.
So this loosely follows a similar path. The comic doesn't dive too deep into it, but essentially in the comic, one went on a mission, got his body basically destroyed, and what they did was they took off his head and put it on the body of a giant orangutan, a space ape.
Okay.
So he gets the whole body of a space ape, and then his head is on that. That's in the comics. Little wonky, kind of hard to do that in a TV show.
I mean, okay. When this show was created, that was a little harder to do than I think it is now. Because I mean, this show's been out a few years now.
I do, and we'll talk more about it as the show progresses. I do think, from what I remember, is season 1 played a little like. Obviously, they're doing a lot more with the show, which is great. Because I think I talked about this already, is the comic, especially volume 1, is 6 very kind of short comic books. And this is a season with 10-hour-long episodes. You're going to have to add a lot of stuff because you can't do it that way. Because there's not enough thing to fill 10 hours worth of content. And what I know is I think season 1 kind of slightly tries to play, I don't want to say careful, but it does seem to be like, okay, we're going to try and make everything seem as realistic, even in the craziness of Gerard Way's vision. We want to have some grounded feelings with it. And then once it got popular, I remember as they started to introduce some wacky things to it, it was like, okay, people like it. I think we can go a little crazy. We can start embracing the insanity. Because if not spoiling it for people, but I know that there's some characters later that show up that are like some weird people.
Well, I think also Netflix wasn't sure on this one.
Oh, sure.
Because at the time, Netflix was like every Netflix original was trash, or it wasn't performing well at the time, especially when it came to superhero or comic book adaptations. They tried the Cowboy Bebop thing that didn't work.
Well, that was way later after this.
Well, right.
Yeah.
But Netflix was kind of struggling with some of their original content at the time. So I think they were trying to play it safe.
I could see that. The joke I always make about Netflix is Netflix was always, at least from what I can always tell, was they were always about um what's the word I'm looking for? They were always more about how many they can make versus the quality that they can make. And so, and I get it. It's they played the law of like odds, because if you make 100 shows, 2 or 3 of them are bound to be pretty good. You just got to make 100 of them to get there, and so that's what they did. Umbrella is one of those things that became one of those 3 out of 100 that just underbeen. Oh, great! This is wonderful. And then, they've had those hits. They've had The Witcher. They've had Stranger Things. Depending how you want to argue it, Sense8 still has a pretty big
It was.
cult
Yeah,
following.
it was actually a really good show at the time. I watched it at the time when it first came out, so I had to wait weekly for those episodes.
See, I missed. I didn't jump into it when season 1 came out. It was right before season 2 was coming out. I'm like, let me give this a try, and I was like, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But no, I get what you're saying though. Yeah, Netflix, they never knew what they were gonna do. They would always make some kind of random stuff, and so they weren't sure if this was gonna be successful. So why put a lot of money into something when they could just put a lot of money into all these other things and wait and see what becomes of it? I will say, I'm excited that this one is kind of slightly breaking the Netflix trope, because the Netflix trope is after usually 2 or 3 seasons you cancel it. And
a lot of times after 1 or 2, yeah.
Well, I know a handful of series that that were pretty popular that would make it to about maybe season 3 and then gone. This one at least is getting a 4th season, so it will be the final season, but it breaks that trope of hold on, let's get through it, let's break that wall.
Well, I think too, a lot of times in Netflix, the other problem they were running into, and this is something that's kind of plagued Netflix forever, is the writers disagreeing with Netflix.
Oh, probably, yeah.
And so a lot of times the writers are like, hey, sorry, I got a better gig. Peace out. So if you lose your writers, you don't have the ability to get more seasons.
I do now. This is just from someone on the outside looking in, so it's, who knows about how accurate I am. I do think Netflix has come around on that, because there are a handful, Zack Snyder. Apparently, they're happy to throw money at Zack Snyder and let him do whatever the hell he wants. So I do think that not on every project, but if someone's loud enough and has made enough of a noise, Netflix is like, oh, this guy has people like him, so let's give them money and let them do whatever the hell they want to do.
Yeah.
But no, so I will say in this episode, we don't have to break it down by how the episode transpires. I'm gonna say one thing for sure that I had totally forgot had happened was the death of Diego's detective friend.
Yeah, I think it was his ex-wife.
Well, ex-girlfriend.
Ex-girlfriend. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they were ex. Yeah, they dated, but they never got married. But it was definitely kind of surreal, because when she dies, the second she died and he finds her body, it all clicked. It was like scenes that I know that are going to happen over the next 2 or 3 episodes hit my brain. I was like, oh yeah, that does happen. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this. Wow, that's sad, especially because what we see play out of the last of the last 3 episodes, and it plays into this a little bit too, is very much that Diego, plays loose with the rules. He's vigilante, does his own thing, and he keeps trying to push for his ex-girlfriend to play loose with the rules. Come play on the wild side. Come do things a little less, more loosey-goosey. And she kept saying throughout the thing, no, I can't do that. I'm a detective. I stand for the badge. I have to do it. And she kind of takes she kind of tries to take, in my opinion, she takes a note out of his book to go save his brother, which we'll get to that here in a second. But I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out for Diego, knowing that she did something not by the books, and she did it, kind of for him, because again, it's his brother on the line, so she wants to help him. And it's he always keeps saying, pushing her to play outside the rules, and so she does it, and she dies. That's ouch. That hurts.
And the thing too with Diego is, so like, he's still very stuck in the Umbrella Academy rules. But the thing I think he doesn't take into account when dealing with her is, one, she doesn't have any type of special ability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, hers is training in human ability.
Mm-hmm.
He was trained different. Like, the Umbrella Academy, these kids were trained to walk into the most dangerous and literally be getting shot at, knives thrown, blown up, you know, whatever. Like, Hargraves did not protect them from anything.
Yeah.
And so, where I can see Diego from his background thinking that, like, she's just like not, I don't want to say that she's not into it, but like that she doesn't understand what's on the line, because he doesn't understand fully the rules are different for traditional civilians.
Yeah. He probably almost prudish almost.
Right. Because he is a superpowered individual.
Mm-hmm.
The world doesn't work the same for them.
Well, he was trained to be this, like, not killer per se, but he was
Nightwing.
trained to be this. He's trained to be Nightwing since he was a child. So, like, versus her, she had a normal childhood and didn't start becoming this detective until she went to the academy. You know, like, yeah. No,
so
it's interesting.
Yeah, but speaking of the brother, Klaus. Klaus, I love Klaus. I do. He is just amazing.
I love, and right off, like, when we first see Klaus in this episode, they're torturing him. They're torturing him, and he gets a hard on, and they're like, "What the hell is that?" He's like, "Oh yeah, nothing like a little bit of choking to get the blood flowing." Like, he's just such a freak. And he's rolling, and I love that he's like, "You guys stole the wrong brother. They probably don't even know I'm missing."
Yeah. No one's coming for me. No one's coming for me.
The majority of the episode, no one knows he's missing. It's not till the very end that anything clicks. They're like, oh, "Where's Klaus?"
Yeah.
It's just like that.
Well, but it's kind of like how we talked about in our last episode. Klaus just fallen off the radar. That's Klaus.
Yeah, that's normal.
As far as they're concerned, he's gone for his next fix.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing that gets me is, like, and I know this is part of the story and part of what makes it so hilarious, is Hazel and Cha-Cha knowing that, like, now understanding, like, hey, there's this whole academy of them. You would have thought that somewhere they would have been like, we need to find an archive or something that tells us more about them.
They have that whole scene when he's like, "What the hell?" He goes, "The whole family's a bunch of fucking freaks." And this is another thing where they didn't tell us about any of this. Like, we need hazard pay. Like, we were just sent in like a normal job, and it's clearly not a normal job.
But the best part was the candy.
Oh yeah, you could tell these people had no, like, how did these people not know a marijuana leaf on the chocolate bar?
Yeah, like, I'm like, oh, I forgot about this part.
Yeah.
And then, like, when they go into the lab and they're just like dancing around.
What's funny is, like, when they first set the place on fire, in my head I'm thinking, why would they have done that? And I'm like, oh, because they were so stoned off their mind. They were just like, oh, we need to stop 5 from doing this. So we're just the first thought that pops in our head. Let's set the place on fire.
Yeah, light it on fire. Yeah.
And dance around and, like, just play around with the eyeballs and then, like, the mechanical hands, and they're like high-fiving. Like, it's just like, well, and we don't see anybody else in the facility, so somehow they got in. We don't know what time of day. It seems like it was in the middle of the day because of everything else happening. And then, like, what's funny too is when we see them first walk into the lab, they're not wearing their masks. It's not until the very end of that sequence that they put their mask on. So it's like, what is going on here? It's so weird.
Yeah, but that was great. I mean, and here's the worst part. Like, you know that Klaus knew what they were.
Yeah.
And Klaus is like, oh, wait a minute. Like, yeah, we want them to take them. But then it does also give a little bit more insight into what Klaus had to endure.
Yeah. being locked
to
in a
learn
crypt.
how to manage his power.
That was. I can only imagine. I know I was a scaredy cat, so like, I think like the first trailer for Supernatural came on in the WB, and I was like, I don't want to watch this, man. This looks terrifying. This guy is seeing this in his like day-to-day life. Like he's traumatized by the people who just died and like or can't wrap their heads around being dead, and they're having that pain and anguish. Oh my gosh, poor kid. And yeah, he asks, dad character, can I come out? And he goes, 3 more hours and shuts the door. Like,
yeah.
We see now why he's always stoned.
Well, and I think, like scary movies aside, some kids have fear of scary movies, some kids don't.
Mm-hmm.
But when you close your eyes and you hear people calling your name,
yeah,
and they are disembodied people,
mm-hmm.
that's going to freak anybody out.
100%.
And the worst part was, it wasn't even like Hargraves was like where Ben was sitting there talking through it with him when he was stuck in that closet.
He's helping him logically process it as well as emotionally support that as well.
Right. Hargraves is just like, figure it out, kiddo.
Sink or swim, die.
Yeah, because Hargraves doesn't, and this is where I think it's starting to become a little more apparent for most people that Hargraves doesn't really understand what their capabilities are. So he doesn't really know how to develop it.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, his developing it was a lot of really harsh methodology.
I can kind of see that. Yeah. We do see quite a bit throughout what we've seen so far is that he is often studying them. So yeah, maybe he didn't quite fully understand their powers, so he didn't know what the best route to draw it out and that kind of stuff. So I could see that. That's definitely
because he's a man of science, and like while their powers are technically there is some sort of scientific explanation one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain to someone why they're seeing disembodied people?
Yeah.
Like, how do you explain to, 5 why he can teleport? It's
yeah.
Those aren't things that you can just like explain in a way that makes sense to people who don't even really know.
Now, I have a funny thing to say about power, since we're talking about powers. And the comic book is kind of the same way, and then the show feels like it still follows this path, which is good. And I brought this up before, their powers are some of them are well defined, and some of them are very much not well defined. And I find that kind of unique because in anything with superpowered heroes, people, whatever, it becomes very clear what in most scenarios, it's very clear what everyone's powers are. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, so Diego seems to have control over knives, right? Like he can throw a knife and it can go any direction he wants it to go.
He can bend the bullet with knives. Yeah.
Yes. We haven't fully seen it. We've seen glimpses of it a little bit, but like we know Allison can basically sway people to do what she wants by talking to them, pushing her thoughts onto them. We have seen that 5 can teleport, and it looks like not only can he teleport from A to B, but he also can now time travel as well with that teleportation. We see, let's see, who else I would dive in here with Luther, because what actually is Luther's power?
I think it's super strength.
I think so too. I think it was just super strength, and it's just because we see him in the old when they were young kids. We see him throw someone out a window. So you're right. I think it was just super strength, but it's just funny that now he looks it too.
Well, and that may also be because like when it showed Luther like pre-amputation,
mm-hmm.
He was still pretty a big guy. Like he was built like a football player.
Yeah. Maybe that was naturally more than him working out, maybe.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that may be why like I said, there was a serum that was used in the show, but in the comic, like you said, they were putting his head onto a gorilla's body.
Yeah.
Because he already knows how to manage the strength that, I mean, for those of you that have never ever talked to anybody who's worked or studied gorillas, people that do that, like, it's a really unique job. I had a college professor who, and it was a science professor, that worked at a local research facility here that actually helps study medicine from animals that are rescued. And this includes like captive gorillas. And these are animals that when they come to the facility, they're already sick. They already have cancers. They already have terminal diseases.
Studying as they're trying to treat these animals. I get you.
Right. And they had an incident one time with a gorilla where they always sedate them before they bring them in to do blood work, etc. Because unlike people where we can learn to sit still, gorillas cannot learn to sit still.
Not my ADHD. What? Huh?
Yeah. So they had one of the gorillas that they were bringing in to do some blood work on. He was tranquilized. It took 3 large men to carry him in. They got him on the table. The doctor started the blood draw, and somehow he started coming out of the sedation.
Oh, no.
And the protocol is you clear the room.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, and that the doors are something you would, like, the way he described it, it was like something you would see in a sci-fi movie. There's literally a steel door that comes down. Like, when that happens, you've got so many seconds to get out to get that steel door closed.
Yeah.
And it was 2.5 hours of a gorilla raging around, beating on those walls. Before he got tired, fell asleep, they could go in and resedate him, and then do the blood work, and then take him back to his enclosure.
Oh, did you? This is a little tangent here, but have you seen the TikTok that just? I don't know how old the footage is. It looks pretty new, of the zookeeper getting trapped in the ape enclosure.
No, but I can imagine that being somewhat terrifying.
So yeah, I saved. I'll look see if I have the video and I'll send it to you. But like, it shows. It looks like at some point there was 2 zookeepers in the enclosure. I don't know how it started, because the video obviously takes place after things start going crazy. One of the zookeepers darts into through the door and shuts the door. The other zookeeper is on the other side of the enclosure, and this ape knows that there's someone there, and so he hasn't seen the second person, but you can see he's looking hard. This other person is trying to hide behind a tree. There's a tree, and you can see they're trying to line up. And we see on the other side of the enclosure, there's like a glass window where people can look through and view. And so the people see that this person's in help. So they're trying to like get the gorilla's attention through the glass things. And the gorilla charges up that glass, pounds on it, and then he's just sitting there. And you see him turn around, and the person is trying to like keep moving with the tree, so they're staying behind the tree. There's a thick enough tree, and you could see the ape it knew someone was there, and it was like, oh my god, this person's like, if they get seen, they're dead. And luckily something caught the ape's attention, and he turned and he booked it to the other side of the enclosure, and at that exact moment the person booked it towards the door, and they were able to get through the door and shut it real quickly. But it was like it was definitely clearly one of the things that was not supposed to happen. Something happened.
Yeah, and gorillas are incredibly fast.
Yeah, I was watching it, just fucking through. There was a some kind of metal bucket on the ground. I'm guessing got dropped by the other one who darted. And when he ran, it was in front of him because he was running towards things. So he like hit it. It fucking flew, like that thing.
Yeah,
he just ran at the glass, and he just bam right on the glass.
Well,
and I was like, what?
And so to that point, though, Luther's strength in his normal body could have been equal to that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So when they had to make the choice in the comic, hey, we're going to put him onto a gorilla's body, he already knows how to contain and deal with that muscular structure.
That's fair. That makes sense.
So scientifically, while we know that it's very unplausible, at least in today's scientific world, yeah, I mean, give it another like 10, 20 years. But right now in this time-space continuum, we know that most likely would not have sustained him.
That we know so far.
Yeah. But for the sake of, let's suspend some disbelief here.
Yeah,
For the sake of
we'll get rid
comic,
of conspiracy theories real quick.
yeah. We'll go ahead and suspend that disbelief just a hair for now. So for the sake of the comic, it makes sense why you would do that, because that
Yeah.
way he keeps his strength.
Mhm.
And all these other things that he's already used to, and it's not like he's gonna have this strength all of a sudden and like
Not know how to use it. Yeah.
not know how to use it and just be crazy.
In the volume 1 comic, I just got done reading it completely, all ready to go. It's really never comes up why they did it. It's just, oh yeah, we had to put his head on a space ape. Okay, like so. I'm wondering if that comes into play in volume 2. Maybe they'll talk a little more about it. I've actually never read volume 2 and 3, so I'm excited to read the last two.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that. But it's just funny in the comic where it's like, yeah, his head's on an ape. Why? I don't know.
It is. It just is what it is. Yeah.
I don't just roll with it, man.
Yeah.
Uh,
No one questions it. It's fine.
So I will say, we're talking about the guy keys in the apartment.
Yeah. Ted Bundy.
This is okay. So before that scene, when we see his interaction with her when she's waking up on his couch, that interaction to me feels wholesome. That's just for me, but it feels wholesome because it does feel like he's trying to be kind to her. He's trying to be, like he notices someone else has a similar, like maybe complicated past with their family, and he wants to help her get out of that mind. When he's like, "Hey, never tell me sorry just for existing," and like I really, unfortunately, my little broken heart related to that because I'm like I'm always saying sorry, and so like I was like, oh, he's being wholesome. It's not until we get to that scene where he's in her apartment that immediately I was like, okay, yeah, the flip turned, and I was like, yeah, that's
so
yeah.
obviously one thing you didn't catch.
I guess not. Well,
when he went to the waking her up, it was sorry, I didn't think I was making that much noise. Listen to the noises that are being made. It's not like normal, like, oh, someone's sleeping, let me gently open this cabinet door. It's very much like, here, let me like make a lot of noise to intentionally wake this person and then pass it off.
Well, he does say though he was purposely doing it because he says to her, he goes, I would have let you sleep longer, but and recognizes, oh yeah, she has her rehearsal. So he does say that.
But I think it's also the same kind of thing where, like I said, like the duality, where as a woman who's seen that level of creepy in real life, it's mostly like it's catching her off guard because she wakes up, obviously she hears the noise and wakes up. And he's like, oh, sorry, I wasn't meaning to be too loud.
He's like, hopefully I wasn't being too loud for you. Sorry.
Yeah. And then, but I couldn't let you sleep all day. Like, oh, hold up. Like that should give you pause right there. Like, wait a minute. 2 seconds ago you were saying you didn't mean to wake me up. Now you're saying you couldn't let me sleep all day.
I guess. I just, again, that scene to me feels relatively wholesome. But that's just for
back
me.
to Vanya though.
Yes.
And she says something which, like we've talked about, Hargraves treated her differently. And I think a couple of our shows ago, we talked about, like, is it because he was afraid of what her power actually was?
We haven't talked about that, but
okay, yeah, there are some undertones there that maybe that was more of what was going on. And when she mentions, like, oh, I forgot my meds, like, we don't know what these meds are. She doesn't say that they're for anxiety. She's just, this is medication I've taken my entire life.
I guess you're right, because I know that she says she gets anxious without them. I know she says that, but I guess you're right. She doesn't say that they're anxiety medication.
Right.
Yeah, so I can see that. I was going to say she does say she's anxious. She gets anxious without him, and that's when he's like, "It's one day. I think you'll be okay."
Right, because most of those types of medications, they have to build up in your system.
Yeah.
So if you miss one day, it's not an end all be all. Just
yeah,
take it within a day or two.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the end of the world. You're not gonna start going schizo on it. It's just one of those things
Yeah.
where like, yeah, maybe don't deal with anything too crazy today. But um, but no, I get where you're coming from, and again, since I'm not a woman, I obviously wouldn't be able to read some of those things. But I still feel like the early introduction of this character, for the most part, until that scene with the keys, I felt like he was being wholesome. Like it was an easy way to swim. And this, by the way, this character is a character for the show. It was a character not in the comics.
Yeah.
The character he is, but I think he's supposed to be a image of a character in the comics. It's not the same character in any capacity.
Yeah.
In the comics, what happens is there is a character that is the leader of a orchestra. They are a bunch of I don't know if you want to call them villains or what, but basically they're part of a cult that is trying to end the world, and he is the conductor. And the conductor uh, is trying to play because he's trying to play a symphony that will end the world. I believe it's called the Apocalypse Suite, which is the name of the first volume, Apocalypse Suite. And in the comic, he eventually will figure out, which I will play more into. Vanya will be the key to the Apocalypse Suite, and so in the comics, he goes after her, and so I think that is slightly hinting at what I think that's slightly what this character is supposed to be, but it is not the same character in any capacity. He is not, because the conductor never once like tries to befriend Vanya. The conductor never once tries to be like, "Hey, I'm a good person. You should listen to me. You should let you know." He very much, I think, his first introduction to Vanya is like, "Hey, I'm evil. I'm trying to end the world. You
And
should
I need
help
you
me."
to help me.
Yeah, that's like in the comics. That's like straight up his first introduction to Vanya is like, "Hi, I'm the conductor, and I want to end the world, and I think you can help me. Come help me." You don't like your family anyway. Your family sucks, so come work with me.
Well, and so here's the thing. I feel like they've done this really well in the show, though, where they've bounced back and forth with, is he a good guy? Is he a creep? Is he a good guy? Is he a creep?
Okay.
Because the thing is, when you see him, the way he's moving around the apartment,
Oh yeah,
when you see him,
very sketchy.
yeah, that's not like I had to use the restroom
Very
kind of
sketch
movement.
sketch.
Yeah. That's not even like, oh, I wanted to leave these flowers for her sketch. Like that was, I'm trying to make things look like I haven't disturbed them while I've been looking for whatever I'm looking for. Like, is everything in place where it should be? And so, we have Allison who catches him
and trips him.
Trips him, yeah. But and of course he gives her this spiel that, oh, I wanted to bring her keys back by, and when I got here I had to use the bathroom.
It's definitely a weird thing to do. I don't know. I think I would hold it. I'd go to a gas station.
Well, yeah, especially, and just hear me out here. Like, Umbrella Academy is in a city like New York. So that means that she's got like 6 locks on her door that probably have to be locked with keys except for one. Like, why wouldn't you just walk, like when you realized, oh, I have her keys,
just walk back to the
theater and make sure she has her keys, or meet her after practice and say, hey, I realized you left your keys. Like, that would be the sweet gesture. And then of course we show her and Allison. Yeah, we show her and Allison going back to her apartment. She finds these flowers, calls him and thanks him for them. And then you see him with a bottle of pills.
Pouring
with her name, dumping him down the drain.
Yeah. So that's interesting because obviously he's clearly he knows something about these pills that we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like, ooh, I will say Allison this season, I forgot how like wish-washy she is. In the sense of like one moment she's like, hey Vanya, I want to be sisters. I'm sorry we've been shitty to you, but I want to be sisters. Next episode, you know what, Vanya, you're just in the fucking way. Just fuck off. You know what? You don't even like us, Vanya. And the next episode, I'm really sorry for being a bitch. Maybe we should be sisters again. It's like, man.
I think some of that, though, like especially with the Vanya, you're just in the way comment, that kind of gets back to what we talked about last week of their sister she is the only one to their knowledge that doesn't have power.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she's in danger. And they possibly couldn't have stopped it.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than being normal human beings and like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're safe. I'm so worried that, but oh my God, something could have happened to you. Hargraves taught them to all keep up this front.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
it's always dialed to 10 and dialed to 11 every time.
Yeah. And so I think that's where some of these reactions come from is because you can't show weakness when you're on these missions.
Mm-hmm.
And when Cha-Cha and Hazel stormed the house, it just became a mission to them instantly.
Yeah.
So I think that's where some of those things come from. There's also, Allison trying to deal with the fact that, everything in her life is kind of fallen on its head because of her powers.
We see her looking at that magazine that, like, I believe that's her ex-husband and her daughter on the cover there.
Yeah.
They're like on like a People magazine or whatever, and it's yeah, Allison's an interesting character. That's for sure. I will say, I feel like there's at this point in time it does happen in the comics. Like I said, I don't feel bad talking about it. It's not going to be spoilers for people watching forward in the show because we won't talk too much about anything super forward. But in the comics, when Allison and Luther are kind of starting to bond over them trying to, after they just got attacked for the first time, and they all had to like bond together for the first time after years of not working together. When she is first in the comic, she's wearing like regular street clothes, regular whatever clothes. Luther is the only one that's wearing his Umbrella Academy uniform. When they go after they survive their first battle and they need to like prepare to go to maybe a second battle, Allison shows up in her Umbrella Academy uniform, which of course Luther is all like, "Oh my gosh, like you put it back on, you're part of the team again." She walks up to him, and you take this however you want to take it because we know Luther's feelings, but they're sitting there chatting, talking about each other's lives and all the stuff they've had to deal with, and she looks over at Luther and she goes, "Hey, I heard a rumor that you've always wanted to kiss me." And so he leans in and kisses her. In the comic, it slightly seems to be a more of a wholesome moment, but really, man, like knowing Allison's personality as we see her in the series, that's not a good thing. Like she's already talked about how she gets everything she always wanted because of her power.
Yeah.
So it makes you really cringe a little bit knowing that, like, man, she has that mindset because she was raised to have this mindset. No one told her no, and no one could tell her no. And so I don't know. Allison's character is just she's a hard character to like.
Yeah. Well, but you saw that though too, like in the first episode, in the beginning of this episode, when Luther kind of was waking up from, and he kind of comes out and like they tell him about mom, and she's like, "Hey,
yeah, straight to it. Yeah, like
I want you to talk to me," and she like reaches for him, and he's like, "Oh no," like
yeah,
like I know what that hand is, like no,
yeah. I you're my sister, but I don't want to convey my feelings to you, and I know you have the ability to do that, and I can't let my guard down for a minute because you'll do that.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting that the whole family believes mom was killed by Cha-Cha and Hazel. And Diego doesn't, when it finally makes it around, the info makes it back to Diego. Diego does not change that narrative. He doesn't deny it, but he doesn't really.
He doesn't correct them.
Yes, exactly. When they're just like, "Oh, mom's dead. Did you know?" And he's like, "Well, you got what you wanted." Like,
well, but I think too, like, because he knows how conflicted the family was about it. Like it was a split of like, and he was one of the people that didn't want it to happen.
Oh yeah, he was the closest to
Yeah,
her.
he was very adamant against it, but I think too he also understands from when he was working with the police
Mm-hmm.
that if he were to have been like, no, I shut her down because I think she's, I'm seeing now what you guys are seeing.
Yeah, you finally got
That
to
would
me.
have shifted the suspicion of everything back to him.
Yeah.
And the fact that he lives his life like Nightwing supports that narrative.
There's two things I definitely got to say about that real quick. One, with the whole mom dying thing, I love how awful it is that Allison's way of telling her is in the middle of the street after she gets out of practice. Hey, so mom's dead. You couldn't have waited until we got back to the apartment to talk about this, or take me to a bar and buy me a drink and sit me down. Like, hey, mom's dead, and I think that goes to show how little Allison really saw their mother character. Because again, she kind of Allison. I think Allison still, she's a machine. She's not a real person. But I think Vanya, especially when we saw the flashback, just because Diego was the closest, we see that Vanya still had a very strong connection to her too. Because like when everyone's getting ready for the mission, Vanya's in there practicing violin, and she's like, "Very good, Vanya. Thanks, mom." Like we see that there's a connection to her. So like, just Allison's very much a casual, like, "Oh, mom's dead. I wanted to be the first to tell you."
Well, the
In the
other
middle
side
of the
of that,
street.
well, and stop and think about it though, because even like Hargraves being dead, they're like, oh, so what happened to dad? It gets back to that their entire lives, like from the time they were children, they were raised that people die.
Yeah, just
People get murdered.
So just God, it feels so cold. It feels so
Well,
cold.
and it is though, but think about it. I mean, if you are being raised, and I mean, think about soldiers. The US military is a very, very, it's another example of this. Like, there is a certain amount of that training that has to desensitize you to the fact that you're taking another person's life.
Hey,
Now, mind you, you are
okay.
Well, but there really is though, because with what the Umbrella Academy was, they were essentially a superhero force to protect the public.
Yeah, protect the world. That was what Luther said was their mission, was to protect the world.
And that means that sometimes you're going to have to make that decision to end another person's life, and you have to be able to be okay with that.
Yeah. That's
and fair. I think what we're seeing with not just the death of Hargraves, but also mom being deactivated.
Mom got killed, okay?
Well, yeah, mom got killed, okay. That's really what it is. Yeah. If it was, well, Diego, what do you mean you shut mom down? That would be different, and that may trigger a more emotional response than thinking mom got killed as part of that attack.
Well, Diego is the only one. And so let's talk about Diego a little bit again.
Yeah.
So, one, we see Diego is like the only person having an emotional response to this, really. Because when he's sitting on the porch, you see that he's able to have a casual conversation, but the second after he tells her mom died and she tries to talk to him, he can't form words. Because basically he doesn't know how to handle this. Like anything else, focusing on the mission, focusing on what he needs to do, this kind of stuff, he can do that. He can put his feelings aside and focus. But when it comes to talking about the death of his mother, he can't do it. And it's like, oh my gosh, so there is a human being in there. And so it's really cool to see. Great for the actor, by the way. Great moment, because I actually felt emotional there. I also want to say with Diego is that the scene where Diego and Luther are talking to each other throughout this episode, especially when they're at the library, and they, he turns to Luther and he's like, "Did you ever ask? Did you ever wonder why I left?" And Luther's like, "Because you could never be number one," and he's like, "Yeah, no." He's like, he goes, because when I was 17. When you're 17, you leave. That's normal. Like that's what you do. You move out. And he goes, "I moved out. I got a job. I had to learn to pay bills." He's like, "You've never had to do that, Luther." He goes, "I went and made my own decisions." He's like, maybe, he goes, "If you want to be mad about all of us leaving, fine. I'll accept that. Do what you want to do." But like, maybe the question you should be asking is not why we all left, but why you stayed. And turning that around on him, I was like, man, it's such a 180 for this character because since episode 1, Diego has come off as the like, I'm a hothead asshole who just jumps in and fights things and does things with knives, yeah. And it's like, oh no, like he's had to deal with like having a job and paying bills and like trying to survive in the world and make actual decisions for himself. And I'm like, oh shit, like it kind of is cool to see how like, and maybe in the beginning we thought Luther was on the right side and you had Diego being a dipshit. But it kind of turns a little bit. We're like, well, I guess Luther's been rich baby boy who's never had to fend for himself, never had to think for himself, and
He's the
Diego
trust fund baby.
has. So
he's the trust fund baby. Yeah, but everybody else in the house did go out and kind of found their own way in the world.
Yeah, and so that's a really I mean, to me, like that's storytelling, baby. Like that's like, oh my gosh, you actually, there's layers on Diego's character that makes him slightly more like not just relatable, but also makes him kind of an endearing character. It's like, oh man, he's super douchebaggy, but there's kind of reasons why. like he's he's been dealt with the life he's had and he's dealing with it. Maybe not in the best way, but he's dealing with it. Luther didn't. Luther's riding around on a bicycle with a gallon of milk in the hallway. Just like,
and then Dad sent him to space.
Yeah. Oh, I do also want to joke that like Pogo is talking about how they just got attacked. Remember, was I not last episode talking about where's Pogo during this attack? So did Pogo just hide out in like the room and he just opened doors?
He hid out like a security room and just watched it on the screens. Like
what is he? Also,
but really, here's the other question: does Pogo really have any power other than just being a talking chimp?
No, he doesn't.
So I mean, he would be about as useful as Vanya.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Pogo is just Pogo, but it's still funny though because like Pogo's just there. He's just there. He's the caretaker and he's there. I guess it's one of those things probably where they're like, we don't need to spend the money to make a CGI chimp this episode. So we'll save him for next episode to have the aftermath. Save that. We'll do some cost affection with the money here. I do also like that scene. So when we see Luther, Pogo, and Diego fighting in the room, and Diego's calling Luther a monster, just great. And Luther basically points and goes, "What do you consider Pogo then? Is he just an animal to you?" And it was like, yeah, kind of put it in perspective. It's like you're gonna sit here and mock Luther for being bulky, whatever, and he's just hoorah man. It's like, yeah, what do you think Pogo is? Pogo's just a fucking ape with the intelligence of a human being. Are you just gonna call him a monster too?
Pogo probably really does get turned on by Animal Planet. I mean,
do they do it like they do on Discovery Channel?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I don't want to know. God.
I mean, the whole show, everyone's got a kink. I mean, it set the tone with Klaus.
So you just made me think
like as soon as he said, "I'm almost there," I was like, "Oh Lord."
Well, that's what she goes. Is that what I think it is? And then Hazel walks over.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, I do. You saying that just made me think of the episode in Friends where Chandler is gonna watch an adult movie and Monica shows up to surprise him, so he changes the channel to Discovery Channel, and it's like a shark documentary, and so she thinks that he's watching shark porn, and so she's like is trying to deal this whole episode. She's trying to deal with like the guy I love is in the shark porn, so I have to figure out a way to like deal with that. And so she tries to like make moves on him by putting on shark Discovery Channel stuff, and he's like confused by it. Like, what the fuck is going on? Shark porn. Good times.
Oh, normal people, how you worry me.
That's so great. Going back
to saying, like, even in my most naive times in my life, I would have never made the leap from Discovery Channel Shark Show to shark porn.
Hey man, everyone likes Shark Week. I'm just saying.
I mean, I totally get that. There's a niche for that, and I'm totally cool with that. But like, unless there was a conversation that, hey, so I think this is kind of but like, I wouldn't be troubling myself with, oh no, he was watching sharks on the Discovery Channel and he had a chubby.
I would say this just goes
Like,
back.
I would have known there was porn involved, just not shark porn.
We have been conditioned to not communicate, and all that episode told me is, had Monica had any level of communication skills, she could have been like, "Were you watching shark porn?" Just right there.
The whole thing is like, at the time when that show took place, like, you had remote controls that would show you previous. Just click the previous one. That would have like cleared up any questions you had. Like, because now she's all worried about like the fact that, oh no, he likes shark porn. Like,
Yeah.
Not saying that's not out there. So like, y'all, I don't need you to link it. I know that this exists. Okay. If y'all have ever chatted with us on the Geek Gauntlet, you know that if it's out there, I probably know it exists.
You guys better go find Kat on Twitter or X and link all the shark porn you can find to Kat right now, because she doesn't believe it exists. So go link it all to Kat.
No, I know it exists. That's the whole thing. I know this exists. But, and I guess this is because, once again, let's face it, I'm not normal. I lean a little bit more towards Klaus than Allison. Okay.
That's a very much good thing.
So I'm just like if my friend came to me and was like, I think he's into shark porn, I'd be like, oh honey, no, he's a little too normal for that. This is what probably happened. He's probably afraid to tell you he watches porn at all, which should worry you even more.
I guess you did the logical way of thinking. Me, I would have been like, huh, let me Google that.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. Interesting. Wow.
Well, but it's also like, if you know your friends, like, do I have friends that shark porn is in their repertoire? Yeah. I know. I have certain friends that if someone came to me and was like, I think he was watching shark porn, I'd be like, oh, that totally tracks.
Hey, I would be lying if I didn't say my D&D group, we have definitely been paused in the middle of game session to talk about weird things Bad Dragon sells.
Yeah, exactly. Because the bard always has to seduce the dragon.
Hey, but there are Bad Dragon D&D dice that I really, really want. I'm just saying. It's like $16.99. I haven't bought them yet. I really want to.
Yeah. But how did we get distracted onto shark porn?
Well, you're the one who talked about Pogo getting turned down by Animal Planet.
Oh, that's true. Okay, yeah. So that's where we were with that. So that I don't totally derail the train today.
Yeah. With Klaus, let's go back to him a little bit more. So we got to see, since he's a little more sober now, he starts seeing more dead people. I kind of like that there is all these dead people. That scene where he's talking to Hazel and Cha-Cha, and you see the wide angle, and there's like 20 people all in this room. That's such a cool looking scene.
Yeah.
And Ben's like, talk to them, use it. And so he does. He's able to like talk to each person, and then he's like tells them like, oh, do you remember this person? Remember that? Oh, this one person's so grateful that you let his wife get away. He's so grateful. And Cha and Hazel are like, we need to talk.
Know this shit? Yeah.
Yeah, like, how does he know this? He's like, you let that person get away. You said you killed her. You see, he's trying to cover his tracks, very much like, I got bored, so I wanted to give her a head start. It's and Hazel and Cha-Cha are coming to terms with realizing how not normal this job is, because the fact that this is no longer like, they came into this job believing that the person that they're hunting was in breach of their contract, and that's why they're coming after him. But no, it's that he wants to stop the end of the world. And so now they're realizing if they stop him, they are the catalyst for the end of the world.
Like the scene when they were coming down off their
in the donut shop,
chocolates, in the donut shop.
I don't even like sprinkles. I don't even think I like donuts.
But you saw that realization of like, wait a minute, we are being used here
Mm-hmm.
to bring about the end of the world. How do we feel about that? Like, what do we do about it?
Yeah, and and Hazel, you can see, is not really liking that idea.
Yeah.
Like, especially when he looks up and he sees, like, the waitress he's enjoying talking to, like, everyone is gonna die. Everyone here, if we stop if we stop five, like, everyone dies. And so, like, that realization is hitting him. I don't
Yeah.
like, it's not what he signed up for. They signed up to be time assassins, not of the apocalypse. Like, they didn't sign up to kill everyone. They just signed up to kill, theoretically, whoever the company sends them after the kill.
Yeah.
But no, that's uh to wrap things up. Klaus. We see Klaus escape. By the way, the way Klaus escapes to me makes me laugh my ass off way too hard because there's a wide open door. Um, Now luckily he didn't go to the door because he would have ran in the cha cha and got shot. But
Yeah.
he doesn't know that. He could have just ran through the door behind her. But no, what does he do? He's like, I'm gonna take off the screws off this vent and I'm gonna crawl through the vent and hope it gets me somewhere. And it just happens that the briefcase is there because they hit it. So he pushes the briefcase and he steals it. And then we see him on like a bus, and it's funny because he's wearing like a jacket and like a towel. Like that's his, and he's sitting there with this box, and then you see there's a lady sitting across from him.
I mean, have you ever taken a Greyhound? That kind of tracks.
I have never actually taken a Greyhound, so I guess so. Is Greyhound just like a Walmart on a bus?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I've taken city buses, but I've never taken Greyhound. But no, we see he's like, he clearly has no idea what's in this box. He just was happy to get away, and he's like, well, hopefully there's drugs or money. He's like, I'm hoping it's one of the two. Let's see. And he starts playing. He starts to open the briefcase, and a flash of light happens, and he's gone. Wherever Klaus is, he is gone. Obviously, we'll see where that plays out, but it's just so entertaining to see, like, technically, by the end of this episode, no one really finds Klaus. He's still just kind of gone. Because, yeah, when Diego finds his, dead partner on the ground, he, obviously he realized, here's the sirens coming, which I kind of, it works for the story, and I'm okay with it. But I kind of got to laugh at the realisticness of, like, we know that the cop called 30 minutes ago. So in reality, she probably got shot roughly about 20-25 minutes ago. Who knows how long it takes for him to get to that apartment or get to that hotel and then go up and find her. In that time frame, it takes a half hour for the police to show up after. Man, this is a slow police force, especially after they say, like, one of your detectives just got shot. Like, man, the police there suck ass. But
I mean,
yeah, he doesnn't stop. I understand why he wouldn't, because he's traumatized by this. But he doesn't stop to, like, look around for Klaus. He doesn't stop to, like, wonder, because they figure it's at that moment that they figure out that she found Klaus, and he's not there. So, like, he doesn't stop to, like, look for clues for Klaus. He just sees the one clue of the receipt for the donut shop, and then he leaves.
well, the other thing too, though, is she was following a lead on somewhere. I think I might have found your brother.
True.
So for all he knows, like, the lead was a dead end, and she didn't, and Klaus wasn't there. And Klaus is just off on a bender, like the rest of the family thinks.
Very, very possibly. Very possibly. Yeah, I will be excited. Obviously, I know where Klaus goes, but I'm still excited to see that in the next episode, just because, like, I know that plays out with Klaus over the next 2 seasons. Like, I know that's like a traumatizing event. Again, I think so far, 4 episodes in, Klaus is still very much a standout character for the season. I would say Klaus and 5 so far are my standout. I will say Diego this episode had some phenomenal acting moments. The actor, I forget the actor's name, but his character had some such emotional moments and good scenes that I was like, oh, this is good. But I don't think it's enough yet to say, like, he's my favorite character this season so far. Like he's not, I'm not watching each episode for Diego. I'm definitely excited to see what shenanigans Klaus is going to get into, and I'm definitely excited to see like what 5 is going to do, because 5 is always seemingly doing the most insane shit. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, see, and for me, like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like, I've grown up knowing people like Klaus.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, seeing like the shenanigans that are gonna play out later on and the way that they happen, I'm like, no, that tracks, because a lot of people that have Klaus traits are very charismatic people. So, the way that things just kind of seem to quote unquote fall in his lap and work out, it's really just because he's incredibly charismatic.
Which is so weird when you think about it. Like, knowing how traumatized he was from, like, he sees dead people and he becomes the person who's the most charismatic out of the group.
Well, but think about it. He's the one that had to learn how to be charismatic.
I guess, maybe, I guess, getting drugs isn't always the easiest. So you got to be friendly to drug dealers.
Well, also, I mean, think about it. Like, when he's first learning to control that ability,
Mm-hmm.
if you think there probably aren't times when he's looked like he was having a conversation, like in the middle of somewhere with no one else around.
Mm-hmm.
And as he left the house where this wasn't a normal thing,
Mm-hmm.
in order to blend in, he would have to have a reason to pass it off.
Drugs.
Which is where the charisma came in of being able to be just seen as eccentric.
Yeah.
Or, oh, he's just high.
Mm-hmm.
But that brings along its own, because it's basically his form of masking it all.
Oh, yeah. 100%. 100%. It's his coping mechanism.
Yeah.
It's how he deals with, like, numbing out. I mean, we see in that first episode or so, like, he's numbing it so hard that Ben is barely there. And it's not till he's starting to kind of come down from everything that Ben's able to, like, communicate with him again. And so, like, we're watching that play out in real time.
Yeah.
So, no, I think it's great. I think it's interesting. I do think Vanya needs to watch her ass. I think Allison's gonna be. I think Allison's just gonna be a roller coaster because she's gonna keep wanting to. This episode, she seemed very much about bonding with Vanya, so I'm sure next episode it'll be "fuck you, Vanya," or whatever bullshit.
I think that with Allison is like she's the polar opposite of Klaus. Her power meant she got everything she wanted. She never had to learn how to be charismatic.
That's fair.
And her life, because she's chosen to take the easy way out, is imploding on her.
Which it really sucks when you think because I can understand where she's coming from because of it imploding on her is why she's very against her powers right now. But like even when she ran into the guy in Vanya's apartment, she could have been like, I heard a rumor that you told me what the fuck you doing. Like you could have made him tell you, and then he would have had to tell you. Like, but no, she did not. And she just like kicked the shin in, and then after he like looked at her and said, I do love that scene though, but it's cringe and awkward, but that moment where he's very much like, why are you here, if I may ask? Because didn't you say you wanted nothing to do with her after yesterday? Like, oh, there was some feisty some jabs right there at the side of Allison. And Allison's like, you can go now. Like, do you want me to turn my powers on? I will make you think you're a dog, okay? Like, get the hell out.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, though, with him, that play for him was the only play he had. So it's kind of like we talked about in one of the other episodes of like the threat of I'm going to tell your manager or I want to talk to your boss is often used to distract people from your behavior.
Yeah. You saying that line is totally side note here, but it just, as I was telling you in our lovely chat that I've been rewatching Has Been Hotel, and I just watched last night that episode where they go to heaven, and I love when Adam is like, you went to my manager, low blow, Karen.
Yeah, like, but I mean, but here's the thing. In in my daily life for like 20 years, what I had to do was deal with a lot of really, really uncomfortable conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
And when I would start asking those questions that would potentially not result in things ending in their favor, the first, every single go-to was to yell, scream, name call, tell me I didn't know, to trying to distract me from the issue at hand.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a common trick. Like, it's a common psychological thing that if you can get people so flustered about something else, they're not going to pay attention.
Well, they're just not going to want to deal with it, and they're just going to be like, okay, let's just give them.
Well, actually, no. So, like, it's actually been proven that, like, when people go into somewhere like a bank, if they are with part of a team of people to try to rob a bank, usually there's one person that starts a scene first, which then results in the people that would need to know, like extra security guards, tellers, things of that nature, not focusing on
everything else.
They're not focusing on everything else, and they're not focusing on the person because they're so flustered about, I'm about to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So when they ask them then, like, so we heard you were talking to a man who became irate right before this.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about him? Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah.
So that's how the psychology of that works. And so that's what I think he was doing was, well, like, I can't distract her from why I'm here, but let me distract her from asking any more questions.
This has been Psychology 101 with Kat. I like it. I didn't think about that, but that's actually a really smart point that I didn't think about. So I like that. No, I think we have some good stuff to look forward to. This is only episode 4. So we're not even halfway through. Next week we'll be halfway through. Yeah, we still have 6 more episodes of shenanigans to see how things are going to happen. I think one day has passed. I think at the moment, we're now down to maybe 4 or 5 days left of the apocalypse. So we're counting down. We're getting there. We don't know how it's all going to play out. How's the eye going to come into it? How does the world end?
Is the eye going to come into it now because, it was all burnt down?
This is true. It was burnt down. So will it come into play? We'll have to wait and see. I will say, viewers out there, if you haven't seen this yet, I would love for you guys in the chat to comment on whether you're on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're viewing this. Maybe I'll even put a poll on here to say, like, what do you think is going to be the apocalypse? And then if you have seen this, wrong answers only. And just yeah, exactly. Have some fun with it. We'll see where what's gonna be the apocalypse suite, and that is what this season is. It may not be called that, but that is what this season is based off of, Volume 1, Apocalypse Suite. So we will find out what that suite will look like. We'll find out more shenanigans next week, as always. Thank you for joining us. Kat, do you have some fun stuff to talk about with Geek News now?
Well, always. Today is, of course, Happy Super Mario Day. Go ahead and hop on over to geeknewsnow.net and check out all the articles that will keep you up to date on all the latest geek news. You can also, of course, find us across social media on X, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Check out some of our podcasts. We've got some really great geeky podcasts that we have during the week. Mondays, we talk about everything MCU related. We've got the Sith Dominion that talks about the dark side of Star Wars. You can hop on over to Podbean or wherever you get your favorite podcast to hear War of the Stars. They've been talking about Bad Batch and its most recent season. We've got Cantina Happy Hour that is also going to be bringing you, all of that there is to be had in Star Wars entertainment. And Saturday nights, you can find us over with the Geek Gauntlet. So, of course, most importantly, just make sure that, if you enjoy what we're doing here, or if you're enjoying what we do on Geek News Now, or even on Geek Gauntlet, don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Ring that bell so you know every time that we post new content. And we really do want to hear your fan theories as well. I mean, you've heard what we think. We want to know what you think.
Yeah. Like, there's always something that maybe we didn't talk about or think of, and we always love hearing these different fan theories that can, like, really maybe might pivot some of our thoughts. It might be like, oh, we didn't even think about that. Like that's great. So that's I mean, really that's the fun of this, right? Like we get into this because we love, coming up with ideas. Maybe something plays out and we're like, we could have done this better. Hold on, guys. I watched 30 years of Power Rangers. I promise you, there's episodes I thought we could do this better. But again, thank you, everyone. You can always you see below here my Twitter handle for, of course, Geek Talks. So you can go find us there. Of course, you can find us on YouTube, find us anywhere, and stream us, listen, share us, and I guess we will see you back next Monday for part 4, aka episode 5 of season 1 of Umbrella Academy. So thank you for watching Geek Talks Under the Umbrella. Have a great day, everybody.